The late summer heat rolled off the hills of rural North Carolina like a fever. Sergeant James Carter wiped a bead of sweat from his brow, the humid air clinging to his skin like a second shirt. He had traded the sands of Afghanistan for the silence of Appalachian woods, but some things, like tension, never really left. "Hey Carter, you think anything's still alive out here?" Diego's voice broke the quiet as he kicked a rusted oil drum, dust puffing around his boots. James glanced at his former squad mate. Alive? In this place, just ghosts and mosquitoes. The third man, a lanky younger Marine named Alex, squatted nearby, poking at the cracked earth with a broken shovel handle. "This quarry's been dead for years," he muttered. They were out on a weekend camping trip, an old ritual for men trying to remember who they were before the war. But the spot they'd picked was unsettling. A forgotten mining pit, half filled with dirt, weeds, and collapsed fences. No birds, no bugs, just silence. Then it came. A sound. Faint, so faint James thought it was in his head at first. A whimper, he froze. What was that? Diego looked up. James raised a hand. "Shh, hear it again?" There it was, higher pitched this time. A cry, muffled. Alex scrambled over the ridge and pointed. "There, in the dirt. Something's buried." All three Marines moved. Muscle memory kicked in. James dropped to his knees and began clawing at the earth. The dirt was loose, as if recently disturbed. Within seconds, he hit something soft. "Careful," he muttered. They uncovered the first pup. Dead. Eyes closed, its small body limp and cold. Then another. And another. All lifeless. Alex's hands trembled. "What kind of monster does this—" James felt his breath catch. "Hold on, there's more." He pulled away another handful of soil and saw it. A twitch. Then, impossibly, a sliver of movement. A tiny paw jerked. "Here, this one's alive!" He dug faster. A frail German shepherd puppy lay curled, half buried, its ribs visible, one eye shut tight. But the other, that one eye stared up at him. Wide, glassy, refusing to close. It wasn't a cry for help. It was defiance. The pup let out a low, rasping sound. Not a whimper, a growl. "Little guy's still fighting," James whispered. Diego shook his head. "No way that thing should be alive." Alex handed James his canteen. "Try to wet his mouth." James cupped water in his hand and dripped it gently into the pup's cracked lips. It sputtered, but drank. Its tongue flicked weakly. The eye never blinked. That was the moment James Carter made the decision. "We're taking him." "James, the nearest vet is an hour away," Diego warned. "And he's probably not gonna—" "He's coming," James said flatly. "This one doesn't die here." As they hiked back toward the truck, James cradled the puppy against his chest. The pup's breath was shallow but steady. It didn't cry. It didn't fuss. And that single eye never stopped watching him. He named him Rex before they even hit the first mile. At a small emergency shelter an hour north, the vet on call, Dr. Lauren Keats, took one look and shook her head. "He's been underground at least a day," she murmured. "Starved, dehydrated, probably brain trauma. You sure you want to go through with this?" James stood firm. "If he still wants to live, I'm not giving him a reason to quit." She looked at him, then at Rex. "Then we'll try. But I'm warning you, I've seen men come back from worse." James said, "You don't give up on a fighter." The vet started her work. IVs, heating pads, antibiotics. James stayed. Watched. He didn't move from that metal bench for 10 hours. When Rex whimpered in his sleep, James reached out and placed a hand gently on his side. "You're not alone," he whispered. By morning, Rex opened both eyes and licked his hand. That was the start. Not of a recovery, but of something neither of them saw coming, because Rex had survived something no pup should have, and buried with him in that dirt wasn't just a litter of dead siblings. It was a secret, one someone had tried very hard to bury, and failed, because of one eye, still open, still refusing to die. Rex's recovery was slow. His muscles twitched in his sleep, memories buried as deep as his tiny body once had been. The vet warned James it could be weeks before Rex walked again, if ever, but by day 5, the puppy stood on shaky legs. On day 7, he barked, low, hoarse, but full of something raw and burning. James looked up from the battered armchair in the vet's office and nodded. "That's it, buddy. Let the world know you're still here." He signed the adoption forms that morning. They returned to James's modest cabin in the Blue Ridge foothills, a place filled with stillness and the smell of pine and gun oil. James set up a crate, but Rex refused it. He insisted on curling at the foot of the bed, head tucked beneath James's hand, chest rising and falling in rhythm with his new protector. And then, strange things began to happen. It started the night James left a set of blueprints on the coffee table, old military layouts he was reviewing for a security contract. At some point, Rex jumped up, sniffed the maps, and began pawing at a particular section, an old decommissioned base. "You like this one?" James chuckled. But it was more than that. Rex growled, then let out a short bark. James leaned in. The section Rex had pawed was highlighted in red in his notes, a location linked to a government op he'd never fully understood, one that had gone dark years ago after rumors of illegal tests. "Okay," James murmured. "That's weird." A few days later, a stranger in a black SUV slowed outside the cabin. Rex went stiff before James noticed. He darted to the window, nose against the glass, then let out a deep, menacing snarl that didn't fit a pup his size. James grabbed his sidearm and stepped onto the porch, but the SUV was already gone. It was too many coincidences in too few days. James called Diego. "Something's off," he said. "Since Rex came into the picture, I've had 3 weird incidents. One was a drone over the cabin. Another guy tried to act like a delivery driver and scoped the yard." Diego whistled. "You think it's connected to the pit?" "I don't think. I know." Because there had been something else in that dirt. James had pocketed it in the rush. A military dog tag. Stamped into the metal. Project K9-Gen 4. That wasn't standard military issue, not even close. He pulled it from the drawer and looked again. The backside held coordinates, shallowly etched but visible under light. Coordinates that led to the base on Rex's blueprint map. James stared at the tag, then at Rex, who sat beside him now, ears perked, eyes locked on him. "You were never supposed to survive," James said, "and someone's pissed that you did." Rex tilted his head slightly, as if understanding. Then he barked once, sharp and loud. It was time for answers. By the time James reached the edge of the abandoned compound 2 days later, he had memorized the layout. The perimeter was still wired. Motion detectors were half buried under overgrowth. Signs read, "No trespassing, federal property." But the real warning came from Rex, who stiffened as soon as they passed the rusted gate. James crouched behind a collapsed watchtower, surveying the grounds. "You feel that too?" he whispered. Rex didn't make a sound, but his tail stiffened and his nose twitched furiously. He tugged forward, pulling toward a hangar near the edge of the lot. They slipped inside. It was empty, at first glance. Then James spotted the trap door in the floor, almost hidden beneath a discarded tarp. He pried it open. A ladder descended into darkness. "You sure?" he asked Rex. Rex stepped forward, placing both paws at the edge. That was enough. James climbed down. The air turned colder as he descended into the bunker. The hall was lined with old lights, most broken. but a few flickered alive as he passed. They hummed low, casting eerie shadows on peeling walls. Halfway through the corridor, he found them. Cages. Rows of them. Too small for adult dogs. And inside, remnants, scraps of fur, bones, one collar, blood-stained, still latched. The label faded. James's stomach turned. What the hell? Then came the sound. A metallic click. He spun, sidearm raised. A voice echoed through the hallway. "You shouldn't be here." A man stepped from the shadows. Mid-50s, shaved head, eyes too calm. James didn't lower his weapon. "Who are you?" "I'm the one who buried them." Rex growled, hackles raised. James narrowed his eyes. "Then you better start praying I don't let him finish what they couldn't." But the man smiled. "You're looking for truth. You've already got it in your arms. That pup, he was supposed to be the prototype, the final version, stronger, smarter, loyal only to us." James's blood turned to ice. "You made him." "No," the man said. "We made monsters. He's the only one that chose not to become one." Behind him, Rex barked twice, a sharp snap that echoed off the steel walls. James didn't wait. He stepped forward and knocked the man cold with the butt of his sidearm. "You buried them alive," he whispered. "Now let's see what else you tried to hide." As alarms began to echo from deeper inside the facility, James scooped Rex into one arm, pulled the flash drive from the control panel, and ran. Because this was no longer about saving one dog, it was about exposing everything they tried to kill, and the puppy with one unblinking eye had just become their biggest problem. James didn't sleep that night. He couldn't. Every time he shut his eyes, he saw the rows of cages, the bones, the blood. And Rex, lying there as a pup, half buried, staring up through the dirt with that one defiant eye. The flash drive he'd taken from the facility lay on the desk beside his old laptop. He hesitated. Once he opened it, there was no turning back, no unseeing what they'd hidden, no pretending this was just some freak accident involving an abandoned dog. Rex jumped onto the couch and rested his head on James's thigh, eyes full of trust. "Okay, boy," James muttered. "Let's see what they didn't want us to know." He inserted the drive. It wasn't encrypted. That surprised him. There were folders marked Phase 1, 2, and 3, another one labeled DECOM. Inside, James found footage, grainy night vision clips of dogs running obstacle courses, others showing surgical tables. Too many showed handlers shouting, collars sparking with voltage. One folder was marked REXGENFOUR. James clicked it open. There were lab reports, behavioral logs, test results. The logs described enhanced scent tracking, pain resistance, rapid recovery, traits far beyond any known K9 capability. Then came a final note. Subject 9BREX, termination protocol failed. Subject escaped pit integrity breach. Burial incomplete. James stared at the line. They had tried to kill him, buried him alive when they thought he was a failure. But Rex survived. Outside, headlights washed through the blinds. James slammed the laptop shut and reached for his Glock. The vehicle stopped halfway up the gravel path. Black SUV, again. He crouched beside the window. Two figures exited. Tactical posture, clean cut. Not government, at least not officially. Private. Rex was already by the door, growling low. James whispered, "Stay close." The men didn't knock. One moved toward the back, the other to the porch. James waited until the porch guy reached the third step, then flung the door open. "Wrong house," James said coldly. The man froze, but only for a second. "Mr. Weller, we're here for the asset. The dog." James didn't blink. "You'll have to shoot me first." "That's the plan," the man said, drawing a silenced pistol. Before he could raise it, Rex was airborne. He hit the attacker square in the chest, jaws clamping down on the gun arm. The man screamed, stumbling back. James fired, one clean shot, taking the second figure down behind the house. He turned just as Rex released the attacker, who now whimpered on the ground. James picked up the man's comm device. Echo 2, status? He clicked it on. Echo 2's done. Then he dropped it into a glass of water on the table. Within minutes, James and Rex were back on the road. He didn't know who was pulling the strings, but this wasn't just a military op gone bad. This was active, current. Someone was still trying to clean house, and Rex was the loose end they couldn't afford to leave alive. He called in a favor. Maya Tran answered on the second ring. Ex-CIA, buried deep in cyber intel until she walked away after a botched op left her unit burned. I owe you nothing, Weller, she said, tired but sharp. I'm calling it anyway. What is it? I need eyes, federal level, and someone's trying to erase a dog. There was a pause. Come again? He told her everything, except the flash drive, that he'd show her in person. By the time they reached her safe house on the edge of Richmond, it was raining hard. Maya met them at the door, barefoot, holding a cig and a skeptical expression. She looked at Rex. That's the dog? He's the reason I'm still breathing. She stared a moment longer. Then he can stay. Inside, James laid out the drive's contents. Maya scanned it, eyes narrowing. This isn't fringe, she muttered. These logs reference off-books funding routed through federal ghost accounts. And the names... James, this isn't just some rogue unit. These people are still in D.C. She scrolled deeper. Oh my God, look at this. A video loaded. Rex, barely older than a few weeks, was on screen, yelping inside a small cage. Electrodes were strapped to his legs. A voice off-camera said, 9B remains unyielding, recommending enhanced suppression. James's jaw clenched. Maya clicked over to an email trail. One name stood out. Carl Whitmore, Deputy Director of Homeland Security. The man who'd once greenlit K-9 deployments in active theaters. The same man who'd visited Weller's old base months before it was mothballed. James exhaled. He's the one pulling strings. Maya stood. We'll never reach him through legal channels. I'm not going through legal, James said. I'm going through him. Then he looked at Rex. The dog's ears flicked. He was watching, understanding more than most people would. James knelt beside him. You ready for this, buddy? Rex let out one low, deliberate bark. Maya raised a brow. That wasn't a yes. That was a war cry. James stood. Then let's start the war. Because this time, they weren't burying anything. They were digging it all up. And this time, the world would see. By dawn, Maya's safe house was compromised. It started with the smell. Rex sniffed the air, low growl vibrating in his throat, body stiff. James looked up from the floor where he'd been sketching out connections between names on a large sheet of butcher paper. He didn't question Rex. Not anymore. Then came the sharp, metallic click, a sound out of place. Maya caught it too. She was already sliding the laptop into a fireproof bag when the back window shattered inward. Flashbang. James lunged for Rex as white heat erupted, deafening them all. Mia rolled behind the island, firing blind. Bullets ripped through drywall. Smoke flooded the hall. Two black-clad figures moved through the kitchen, quiet, deliberate. But they didn't expect a 90-pound German shepherd to come barreling through fire and smoke. Rex hit the first one mid-stride, locking onto his wrist before the gun could raise. The second turned, too slow. James tackled him, wrestled the weapon free, and jammed a knee into his ribs until he stopped moving. Rex released his target at Maya's sharp whistle. The intruder writhed, clutching a mangled arm. James yanked off the attacker's mask. His face was young, barely old enough to shave. This one's private sector, Maya said, checking the insignia on his sleeve. Not military, Merc. Same as the SUV guys, James said. Maya opened a cabinet and pulled out a go bag. We leave. Now. 3 hours later, they were deep in rural North Carolina, holed up in a run-down hunting cabin belonging to Maya's ex-husband. Rex prowled the perimeter, ears sharp, tail taut. Inside, Maya decrypted a second partition James had missed on the flash drive. This part's air-gapped, she said, buried under the first layer. Whoever set this up didn't want even insiders seeing it. She clicked open a folder labeled FALCON. Dozens of files loaded, purchase orders, blacked-out budgets, surveillance footage. Then she found it. A training camp, buried in the Arizona desert, labeled Facility Redoubt. It was still active. Cameras showed armed handlers walking German shepherds down gravel trails, collars blinking with remote commands. The dogs were bigger, heavier, trained for something more than law enforcement. One still frame froze James cold. Rex, or it looked like him. Same face, same scar above the right brow, except it wasn't him. That's not Rex, Maya said. It's a clone. James sat back, breath stolen from him. Rex wasn't just part of a program, he was the prototype, and they're trying to reproduce him. Maya pulled up the satellite feed. That facility, Redoubt, it's where they're training the next wave. And they buried the real one, James said, rage rising in his chest. Thought he was dead. Rex padded, inside, panting softly, as if sensing the storm brewing. James knelt beside him. They want to make more of you, more dogs with your heart, your instincts, but they don't want the soul. They want control. Rex rested his head against James's shoulder. Then the screen flashed. Maya had triggered a silent ping. We've been tracked, she said. They must have backdoored the footage. They know we've seen it. James grabbed the drive. Maya snatched her burner phone, and Rex was already by the door. The blast hit before they reached the woods. A targeted drone strike. A miniature warhead vaporized the cabin in a boom of heat and pressure. James flew forward, slammed hard into a tree, the world spinning white. Ears ringing, he groaned and crawled. Rex, he gasped, coughing smoke. A rustle, then a soft bark. Rex was limping, but alive, muzzle singed, eyes locked on James. Maya emerged from a ditch, covered in dirt but intact. We're ghosts now, she said. They think we're dead. James looked down at Rex. Let's make the most of it. That night, they huddled inside an abandoned ranger station in the Smoky Mountains. James opened his notebook, drawing a crude layout of Redoubt. We get in, expose them, and get out. I'm done reacting. It's time to hit back. Maya rubbed her bruised ribs. We don't just need proof. We need a story. One the public can't ignore. James nodded. They buried him once, but this time, Rex walks through the front door. Rex shifted beside them, then sat perfectly still, watchful, silent, ready. And in that moment, James knew. They weren't just fighting for justice. They were fighting for something purer. Hope. And Rex, the dog they tried to discard, would be the symbol no one could bury again. The next morning broke cold and grey. Fog clung to the pines like ghosts unwilling to leave. James, Maya, and Rex moved through the forest with silent urgency, heading toward a contact Maya said could get them fake IDs, clean phones, and one crucial detail: access into the Redoubt facility. His name was Elijah Boone, a retired Army logistics officer turned whistleblower, now living completely off-grid in Tennessee. Maya had worked with him once during a sting on an illegal arms shipment. He owed her. Big time. They found him in a shack off an old fire trail, surrounded by solar panels, hydroponic towers, and 6 motion sensors Rex identified before they even got within 30 feet. Elijah stepped out with a shotgun in one hand and a cigarette in the other. "Jesus, girl. Thought you were dead." "We are," Maya said flatly. "And we want to stay that way. But we need in." Elijah glanced down at Rex. The two locked eyes. "That the one they left buried?" James nodded. "And he's the reason we're still standing." Elijah whistled low. "Well, come on in. If anyone's going to burn a black site to the ground with a dog and a grudge, it's you." Inside, the trio poured. Over blueprints of the Redoubt compound Elijah had intercepted months ago. The facility was built like a prison, but disguised as a desert research lab. One way in, 3 emergency exits, biometric locks. "But there's one blind spot," Elijah said, tapping the map. "Underground waste shaft that hasn't been used since they upgraded their water filtration." "Still accessible?" Maya asked. "Barely. But if you're small and angry enough, it'll get you inside." James looked at Rex. Rex wagged his tail once, then returned to alert mode. That night, James recorded a message on Maya's burner phone. "If we don't make it back, someone needs to know the truth." He laid out the basics. Facility Redoubt, the dogs bred for covert combat, the funding trails hidden under veteran rehab programs. He held up a photo of Rex as a pup, taken just days after they'd dug him out. He was never meant to survive, but he did, and what they tried to destroy might be the thing that saves lives. He ended the recording with a single sentence. "Heroes don't always wear boots." 3 nights later, they reached Arizona under cover of darkness. The desert sprawled out like an alien world, all shadow and silence. The waste shaft Elijah marked was still there, barely sealed. A vent panel rusted through just enough for Maya to wedge open with a crowbar. James went in first, then Rex. Maya followed last. The tunnel stank of decay and chemicals. Tight, hot, suffocating. But they crawled forward, inch by inch, until finally, metal grating above them. James popped it open. They were inside. The Redoubt facility hummed above with electric life. Cameras on the corners, men in tactical uniforms. Dogs barked in controlled rhythms from down long, sterile corridors. Rex stayed close, ears twitching, nose lifted. Then he stopped cold. James followed his gaze. Down a hallway through a plexiglass wall, another German shepherd. Same markings, same scar above the eye. A clone. Except this one didn't move like Rex. He was jittery, skittish, reacting to every cue from a handler holding a remote. "They're testing full obedience through pain response," Maya whispered. "No instinct, just fear." Rex growled low. They kept moving. Maya cracked a security panel. James snuck into the server room and plugged in Elijah's bypass drive. A flurry of folders lit the screen. One caught his eye. Project Lazarus, Behavioral Conditioning Through Early Life Trauma. Inside were footage files. James opened one. It showed a hand burying a tiny pup in dirt. Another clip. Electroshock testing. Another. Food withheld for 72 hours. Forced attack drills. Maya stepped beside him, hand covering her mouth. They weren't training dogs. They were breaking them. James saved every file. Alarms suddenly blared. A red light flooded the hallway. "They know," Maya said. They ran. Through the lab corridor, through the kennel wing. Rex stopped once, staring at a younger shepherd chained inside a glass cell, trembling. James looked back. "We'll come back for them. I swear they barely made it to the waste tunnel before guards swarmed the sector." Rex barked twice, sharp and decisive, sounding the alert for other handlers as if he were one of them. The guards paused, momentarily confused. Maya dropped smoke pellets. They vanished into the shaft. Outside, they exploded out of the tunnel mouth into the black desert, lungs heaving, adrenaline flooding their veins. James checked the flash drive. Intact. They had everything. But the sound of chopper blades pulsed in the distance. They weren't out yet. James turned to Rex. "You're not done, buddy. We need you now more than ever." Rex didn't hesitate. He ran ahead, scouting the path like he had done 100 times before, once as a discarded puppy buried to die, now leading a mission that might expose a nightmare the world was never meant to see. The safe house they ducked into outside Flagstaff was a run-down hunting cabin, half collapsing under snow-dusted pine. No electricity, no signal, just silence, broken only by the panting of Rex and the crunch of boots on old wood. James slammed the door shut, barricaded it with a bookcase. "How long do we have?" "Not long," Maya said, peering through the blinds. "We tripped too many alarms. They'll send a private team. Quiet." Disposable Rex was already pacing, sniffing along the walls, stopping once to growl at a darkened corner before relaxing. He was in full guardian mode. James knelt beside him, brushing off dirt and checking his pads. "You good, soldier?" Rex blinked slowly, then leaned into him. Maya laid out the drive. "We've got enough to bury that place in hearings and headlines, but only if it reaches the right hands." James looked up. Elijah's contact. Maya shook her head. "Gone dark." A beat of silence fell between them, heavy and sharp. Then came the sound. Just a whisper at first. A drone's whir, then a voice on a distant speaker, low and distorted. "Give us the dog, and you walk away. No more blood, no more running." James clenched his jaw. "They're not getting him." But the twist came not from outside, but within. Maya's phone vibrated once. A coded message blinked across the cracked screen. "Red Phoenix rises." James noticed her reaction. Her grip tightened. Eyes flicked to the drive. Then to Rex. He stood slowly. "You didn't just want to shut them down," he said. "You were part of this once." Maya froze. "James, you were inside Red Phoenix. That's why you knew the access routes, the guard rotations. You knew how to get in because you helped build it." "I left," she snapped. "I left when I saw what they were doing. They buried those pups alive, James. Babies. I tried to stop it. But now they want Rex back," James said quietly. "And they think you'll give him up." Maya stepped back, torn. "I saved your life. I saved his. And I trusted you," James said, voice low. "I still do. But if you're working both sides, you'd better choose right now." She stared at him. Then at Rex. Rex didn't move. He simply stood between them, head tilted, reading the air like a seasoned operator. Then Maya tossed the phone into the fireplace. The screen cracked, sparked, and died. "I'm not handing over that dog," she said. "I'm finishing what I started. Red Phoenix dies tonight." Outside, headlights sliced through the trees. 3 black SUVs, unmarked, fast. Rex let out a warning bark. James grabbed the flash drive, stuffed it into Rex's vest pouch. "He's the fastest. If we fall, he runs. You understand?" Rex licked his hand once. "Ready." Gunfire tore through the window. James shoved over a table for cover. Maya returned fire through a broken shutter. 2 men advanced with silencers. Military precision. They weren't cops. Rex darted low, fast as lightning. He tackled one at the knees. The man screamed as Rex clamped down hard. Maya dropped the second attacker with a clean shot to the chest. James ducked out the back, Rex at his side. More shots. Screams. 1 SUV exploded, flames roaring into the trees. Maya had planted charges. She wasn't bluffing about ending it. They ran through the woods, branches slicing at their skin, breath pluming in white clouds. Rex darted ahead, barking sharply, then veering left. James followed and almost fell into the narrow ravine. Below, a rescue chopper hovered low, lights blinking, rotors chopping wind. Elijah stood in the open hatch, waving. James hesitated. Maya appeared behind them, limping. "You came," she breathed. "I had to," Elijah called down. "You lit the fuse. Time to fly." They loaded in, Rex first. As the chopper rose into the dawn sky, Maya collapsed onto the floor, bleeding from her side. James pressed a hand to the wound. "Hold on. I'll make it," she rasped. "But now, they know we have the proof, and they won't stop." Rex sat beside her, licking her bloodied fingers. She smiled weakly. "Guess he forgives me." "Yeah," James said, watching the sun rise. "He usually knows before we do." Below them, smoke rose from the forest. The safe house was gone, but in James's hand was the drive. And Rex, alive, alert, unbreakable, was proof that something beautiful had survived something evil. They weren't running anymore. Now they were coming for the ones who buried him. The helicopter landed on a remote plateau outside Durango, Colorado, an old military relay station buried beneath rock and pine. It had long since fallen off the government's radar, which made it perfect for what came next. James helped Maya off the chopper as Elijah stepped out with a hard case in hand. Rex bounded down beside them, tail still, alert eyes scanning every crevice of the ridge. He hadn't relaxed since the ambush, and neither had James. "Inside," Elijah said. "We've got a secure uplink, patched through a burner satellite relay. It's now or never." They entered the station's basement. Rusted steel, broken radio panels, dust thick enough to muffle sound. But in the center was a single modern table, a laptop, and a satellite modem blinking green. James placed the drive on the table, eyes scanning the room for anything off. Maya leaned on the wall, pale but steady. Rex stayed beside her, like he could feel the weakness and wouldn't let her slip. Elijah began decrypting. "You understand, once this goes out, every agency, every private contractor involved in Red Phoenix will come hunting. You sure you want to cross that line?" James didn't hesitate. "They buried puppies alive, Elijah. They turned soldiers into traffickers and dogs into weapons. That line was crossed years ago." The files opened. Video logs, shipment records, email chains, satellite images showing mass graves outside desert compounds. And then, the smoking gun. A live recording, captured by a whistleblower embedded within Red Phoenix. It showed a lab. Medical teams inserting metal plates into Pups' spines. Voiceovers discussing behavioral suppression, military conditioning, opioid sniff training. Then a face filled the screen. A woman. Not a lab tech, not a soldier. Senator Julia Voss. James's blood ran cold. Maya swore under her breath. Elijah sat back. "That's not just corruption," Elijah said. "That's conspiracy at the top of the chain." Voss, calm and collected in the footage, said into camera, "This isn't about cruelty. It's about evolution. If we want loyalty without question, we start early. Control the variables. The military doesn't need pets. It needs assets." The video ended. Maya turned to James. "We leak this. She'll burn the whole system to protect herself." "Good," he said. "Let her try." Elijah nodded grimly. "We need a media ally who can't be bought or bullied." Maya's eyes flickered. "I know someone. A woman named Rachel Banks, Pulitzer winner, lost her brother in a dog unit scandal years ago. She won't blink." James handed her a secure phone. "Call her." But just as Maya dialed, a dull thump echoed through the station walls. Rex perked up. A growl vibrated in his throat. Not the curious kind, the kind that meant death was close. James cocked his weapon. "How'd they find us so fast?" Elijah cursed. "Satellite pings. They must have followed the bird." A flashbang rolled through the entryway. Time slowed. James threw Maya down, covered her with his body. Elijah grabbed the laptop and smashed it underfoot. Rex launched toward the noise, intercepting the first soldier who charged in. Teeth found soft flesh. A scream rang out. James rolled, took out the second man with a clean headshot. Another burst through the window, gun raised, only for Maya, still half bleeding, to to fire a single round from the floor, dropping him instantly. "Clear," Elijah called, "but more will come." James dragged the remaining files onto a separate drive. "We split up. I'll take Rex and get this to Rachel. You two disappear." "No," Maya said, sitting up despite the blood on her side. "Rex doesn't leave my sight. He's not just a dog anymore." James said, "He's a symbol. We can't risk them taking him again." Rex, hearing his name, walked between them. He looked at Maya, then James, then barked once, firm, decisive. He would go with James. Maya held his gaze. "You better come back." James nodded. "With an army?" As they climbed out through the back tunnel, Rex at his side, James knew this wasn't just about justice anymore. This was war. And they'd just put the most dangerous name in Washington on notice. James had slept maybe 2 hours in the past 3 days. Not that it mattered. The weight of the drive in his jacket pocket was heavier than sleep. Rex sat beside him in the back of the beat-up Jeep, ears pricked, nose twitching at every roadside scent like he was reading the road for signs of betrayal. They were on their way to Seattle. That's where Rachel Banks worked now. Freelance, no boss to shut her up, no advertisers to pull funding. She was the last of a dying breed. Honest, relentless, and already on a hit list because of it. He pulled off the highway, taking a long detour through a backwater service road. The city skyline shimmered in the distance, obscured by clouds. Rain fell steadily, the kind of cold mist that clung to skin and kept you alert. Rex gave a low whine. "I know," James muttered. "It doesn't feel right." He checked the side mirror. 2 sedans, dark, no plates, tinted windows. They'd been made. James took a sharp left down a dirt road and hit the gas. Gravel kicked up, trees whipped past in a blur, and Rex braced himself, leaning forward like he was part of the wheel. A bullet shattered the rear window. James jerked the wheel, sending the Jeep skidding around a bend, then through a crumbling wire fence. They bounced over a ridge and landed behind a line of abandoned train cars. He cut the engine. "Out, now!" They ran. Rex bolted ahead, leading the way through the metal labyrinth. James followed, ducking and weaving, heart pounding. Shouts echoed behind them, then gunfire. A drone buzzed overhead. Rex suddenly stopped, growling. James looked up. Motion sensors, hidden in the undercarriage of the train cars. Tripwires. Too late. An explosion ripped through the air, knocking James backward. His ears rang. Everything spun. But when the smoke cleared, Rex was still there, burnt on one flank, limping slightly. But alive. He had shielded James's body with his own. James pushed himself up, coughing. "You saved me again." The pursuit had stalled. For now. They found a storm drain nearby and crawled through it for miles, emerging on the edge of the Puget Sound. James hailed a fisherman's skiff and paid in cash. They crossed silently under the shadows of piers and steel. At dawn, soaked and shaking, they made it to Rachel's safe house in Fremont. She opened the door, shotgun in hand, then lowered it when she saw Rex. "I'll be damned," she whispered. "That's the dog from the photo Elijah sent." James handed her the drive. "You need to see this." Rachel barely spoke for the next 2 hours as she scanned the footage, transcripts, and documents. Her face went pale, then flushed red with fury. "They've got operatives on government payroll. This isn't just a black project. This is institutional." James nodded. "And Senator Voss is the nerve center." Rachel looked at him. "We need to go live. Now. Number, you go live. I'll draw them off. If they think you've got it, you're dead before you can hit publish." Rex sat between them, tail gently thumping. It was like he understood the stakes better than either of them. Rachel hesitated, then handed James a burner phone. "Upload redundancy. If I don't go live in 1 hour, send the files to the backup nodes." He nodded and left. But something gnawed at him. The ambush had been too precise. Someone close was feeding intel to Voss, and if Rachel was compromised... His phone buzzed. One new message from an unknown number. "Wrong dog, wrong war. You don't know what Rex really is." Attached. A blurry photo. Military lab years ago. A litter of pups in cages. One pup staring directly into the lens. It was Rex, and next to him, a woman in a lab coat. Senator Julia Voss. James froze. What did it mean? Rex wasn't just a survivor. He was part of the program from the beginning. And maybe the only one who had ever broken free. James looked down at Rex. "What else did they do to you?" Rex looked up, solemn, patient. James clenched his jaw. Whatever it was, it didn't change the truth. Rex had saved lives, risked his own again and again. He was no monster. But the monsters who made him, they were about to be exposed. All of them. James leaned against the metal railing of the rooftop, the early morning fog crawling across the Seattle skyline, like fingers reaching from a ghost. Below, police cars swarmed in front of Rachel's safe house, sirens low but pulsing. Rachel had gone live 20 minutes ago, broadcasting everything. Names, faces, documents. The files on the drive had sparked a fire that couldn't be undone. And now, the city was boiling. Next to James, Rex sat silent, his body tense. His ears twitched toward the sirens, but his eyes stayed fixed on James. James's phone buzzed, a secure message from Rachel. "They're coming for me. You were right. It was someone inside." Then a second message, a screenshot, a live surveillance feed from a nearby traffic cam. 3 black SUVs tearing through a residential street. They weren't cops. James gritted his teeth and bolted towards the stairwell. Rex followed, his stride purposeful, like he'd been waiting for this. They reached the Jeep just as the rain started again. The roads glistened with oil and tension. James's knuckles turned white on the steering wheel. "We're not letting her die for this." They cut across alleyways, dodging police blockades and military checkpoints hastily thrown up by agencies scrambling to take control of the narrative. But deep down, James knew control was already lost. Voss wouldn't go down without dragging everyone with her. They reached Rachel's location as the first shot was fired. It wasn't a warning. James ducked behind the Jeep, yanked open the back door. "Rex, flank right, distraction." Rex didn't hesitate. He vanished into the shadows, silent. James circled wide, using the chaos as cover. 2 men in black tactical gear breached the front of the safe house. Inside, Rachel had already flipped the table over and crouched behind it, a pistol shaking in her hand. James crashed through the side window. Gunfire cracked. One of the intruders turned, too slow. Rex came from behind like a ghost, jaws clamping down on the man's calf, dragging him off balance. James tackled the second, disarming him with a blow to the throat. The fight lasted less than 10 seconds. Rachel stared at them, wide-eyed. "How did you know?" "Because they sent me a message. About Rex." She frowned. "What kind of message?" James pulled the burner from his jacket, showed her the photo, the lab, the pup, the woman in the coat. Rachel stared, whispering, "That's not just any scientist. That's Voss's sister, Evelyn Voss. She disappeared 15 years ago. They said she died in a lab accident." James felt his breath leave his chest. She didn't die. She ran. She knew what they were doing. Rex wasn't a reject. He was the proof. Rachel looked down at Rex, who sat calmly in the center of the chaos, blood on his muzzle but eyes clear. He's not just trained, he remembers. Before James could respond, the building shook. A voice echoed from the front steps through a megaphone. "James Carson, Rachel Banks, release the dog and surrender." James laughed bitterly. "They're not even hiding it anymore." Rachel's phone buzzed again. This time, from a private number routed through 6 proxy servers. A video message. Rachel opened it. A woman's voice. Calm, measured. I know you found the footage, but you've only scratched the surface. I didn't create Rex to be a weapon. I made him to survive, and he chose you, James. The screen flickered to a hospital corridor. Cameras, scientists. A hand touches the glass of a containment room where a tiny German shepherd pup presses his paw against it. Then the woman's face. Older now. Scarred, but alive. Evelyn Voss. If you want the truth, really want it, come to the coordinates at the end of this message. But come alone. Rachel raised her eyes. It's a trap. James looked at Rex. And Rex barked. Once. Sharp. Decisive. No. James said quietly. It's the end of the maze. Helicopters circled above, tactical teams readied below. James turned to Rachel. Leak the rest, everything, but don't follow us. She nodded. You better come back. James looked down at Rex. You ready to meet the woman who made you? Rex wagged his tail once, then stepped beside him, head held high. Together, they walked out through the back alley, disappearing into the mist. The coordinates led them to a decommissioned naval facility off the Washington coast, buried in forest and fog. James parked the jeep near the gate, heart drumming, and glanced at Rex. The dog stared straight ahead, ears alert, body still. This is it. James muttered. No more running. They stepped through the rusted fence and into silence. The facility had long been abandoned, but the padlocked entrance to one bunker was pristine. Fresh tire tracks carved through the gravel. Inside, fluorescent lights flickered on as they entered. A single woman stood at the far end, lab coat cinched, a thin scar tracing her cheek. Evelyn Voss. Her eyes locked on Rex first, then on James. He remembers me. Rex didn't growl. He stepped forward slowly, nose twitching, not out of fear, out of recognition. You were the only one who wouldn't let go, she said. The runt of the litter, the one they buried because he wouldn't follow orders. James tensed. Why call me here? Because they're going to erase everything. The program, the data, every trace. You need to understand why Rex matters. She motioned to the screen behind her. Footage played. Hidden experiments, field tests, live fire trials. Pups trained not just for war, but for loyalty reprogramming. Emotional suppression. Voss paused on a frame, showing a litter of German shepherd pups inside a containment tank. They started the Sable Protocol after Rex survived. The idea was to engineer resilience through trauma, but I saw what it was doing to them, and to him. James clenched his jaw. So you buried them alive to test resilience? No, she said firmly. That order came from Whitaker. I tried to stop it. Rex was the only one I got out. Suddenly, a loudspeaker crackled to life above them. Dr. Voss, James Carson, this is your final warning. Step away from the dog. Outside, the whir of helicopter blades, dozens of boots on gravel. They followed us. James hissed. No, Evelyn said. They followed him. A blast shattered the front gate. Armed soldiers poured in. James raised his weapon, but Evelyn grabbed his arm. There's another way. She opened a panel in the floor, an escape shaft leading deep underground. I built this when I planned my own exit. It's still wired to the grid. James glanced at Rex. Rex growled just once and bolted into the tunnel ahead of them. They ran. It was tight, dark, but the exit opened into a forgotten supply dock. James hot-wired a boat, Evelyn uploading the last files onto a drive and sealing it into a watertight capsule. You're going to expose them, James, she said. I can't, but you can. He took the drive. What about you? She shook her head. I'm the loose end they won't stop chasing. You get Rex out. That's all that matters. A beat. Then she turned and sprinted toward the direction they came from. Gunfire followed minutes later. But James didn't look back. Hours later, back in Seattle, Rachel went live again. On the screen behind her, she projected the recovered footage. Sable Protocol, Whitaker's voice, death orders signed in triplicate. The nation erupted. Subpoenas dropped. A military tribunal convened, and the president issued a formal directive banning all non-consensual K-9 military enhancements. But that was only half the story, because what moved people more was not the scandal. It was Rex. Clips of Rex shielding wounded soldiers. Rex curled beside the graves of his fallen. Rex pressing his nose against James's cheek when the veteran woke from a nightmare. James gave one final interview. He wasn't just trained. He chose to love, to protect, to hope, after everything. Rex, sitting beside him in a new vest, tilted his head at the camera, like he understood the weight of it all. The video went viral within hours. And in the final scene, Rex sits in the backyard of James's new home, sun setting behind him. His ears perk, eyes focused on the horizon. Then a quiet message fades in on screen. Some heroes wear fur. Some never give up, no matter how deep they're buried. If you believe in loyalty, in healing, in second chances, join our story, share yours, support the mission. German Shepherd, Rex the one who stayed. Fade to black.